Microphone. Da-da-da-da. Hello, welcome back to UXIF streams. It's been a while, and one of the new angles we're going to take is this thing called the Unskippable podcast or Unskippable UI. It's that joke on like the worst UX decisions you can make. But in contrast, what we'll be doing is get joined by subject matter experts who are in the field doing cool UI, usually in Unreal, but we'll also do stuff with Unity. And today we're joined by Mike of Behaviour Interactive. Mike, do you want to give yourself a little intro?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
My name's Mike. I've been doing UI in Unreal for about 10 years now. I started fairly young. I was in high school. We were working on this scrappy little indie project called Mordhau, and I ended up doing. I started mostly on the graphic design side, sort of just making Photoshop mock-ups and sort of like finding the style of everything and slowly but surely kind of just wanting to implement things myself and really get my hands dirty in the engine. And so, long story short, over the course of about like 7-ish years, I went from graphic designer, don't really do much coding stuff, to full on just implementation side, don't really do much design stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, kind of full spectrum, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. All in Unreal Engine, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all in
Nice.
Unreal. So like the biggest chunk of my experience was working on Mordhau, and then following that, doing a couple smaller indie stuff, sort of dipping my toe in gameplay programming and some other sort of things just to round out the skill set, animation stuff, and then professionally found myself working at Torn Banner Studios doing UI code there, and following that now at Behaviour Interactive, also doing UI code.
When you say UI code, is that are you in C++?
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
majority
Yeah,
of the
that's
time.
it's one thing I haven't touched in a lot of the time. Like I shipped entire games with like Off-World Industries where I came from. We did a lot of that work in Blueprint, and
Hmm.
we shipped it. Like we just you tick all the right boxes and check our insights and all these sorts of things. And we had UI programmers for setting back end like callbacks for like online
Hmm.
friends and EOS services and stuff. But a lot of it was written in Blueprint, and so before we jump into like what you've got on screen back there, I
Hmm.
do always have a question. Um, how do you discern the responsibilities between what should be UI in Blueprint versus what should be UI in C++?
That's a fantastic question, and we're gonna see some examples, I think, too, when I start showcasing things of uh, places where I feel I went too far in one direction or the other. Uh,
Mm.
but generally speaking, I mean, yeah, you can make entire like networked uh, like sophisticated systems in Blueprint and ship games. Like it totally works. Um, I think when it comes to UI and discerning like what goes in the native class in C++ and what goes in Blueprint, it largely depends on your team. Like at Behavior and Torn Banner, like it's big teams, and so uh, if you have designers that are wanting to work on the widgets, then that would lock you out from doing logic and stuff in the event graphs and doing Blueprint stuff. So it's kind of like encapsulating and splitting up some of the responsibilities so that we can do code work while design stuff is happening. And it also
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
to like the mergeability of things. You can't really merge Blueprint changes.
Blueprints.
So
Yeah, yeah. Binary files are the bane of large teams, right? So
yeah.
yeah, splitting it up so it's more just manageable and scalable, right? You can have
Hmm.
people working on things all at the same time and merging. I hear that they're
Yeah.
going to get some blueprint merging, but I don't see that solving the problem still. I think that there's still a lot more in C++ world for that, especially in MVVM.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's what have you bought today? What are we looking at here in the background? We see
Yeah.
Unreal Engine.
Yeah. So I've got two projects I'd like to show, and they're both kind of plugins, kind of projects. They're not very release ready, so to speak, but it sort of works, and we'll dive into that. I actually just have one quick point about like the what goes in C++
Oh
versus
yeah, yeah.
Blueprint, and it relates to debuggability. if you have like a packaged game, you can attach the debugger and you can step through and code, which is really handy if there's bugs that don't happen in the editor that only happen in a packaged build.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The
so just kind
Sentry
of
and stuff like that were really like powerful, right?
yeah,
If
yeah.
someone
So
doesn't know what Sentry is, it's basically a plugin that allows you to get like really high level or low level. Which way do you look at that? Detailed feedback on like crashes, reports, like
mhm.
on issues that you're having in your game, and it's definitely something that you'll see in large teams, which I
Yeah,
miss.
a lot of process.
I had people on a demo that I just released on Steam that were just like reporting back to me like it's just black screening, and I was like, ah, without Sentry, I can't do anything about that, and I didn't want to
Yeah,
put Sentry in this solo blueprint project. So,
yeah.
and
I
how
mean,
much
I'll tell you,
value?
like, with Mordhau, which was like just the scrappiest of indie projects. I mean, none of us have made a game before. None of us have shipped a game before. It's like someone crashes, we have to like hunt them down and get them to send us the .log file and like
Yep.
try to go
Yep.
through that. And it is such a manual thing. Um, yeah,
Oh
there's a
man, yeah,
reason a lot of these tools exist.
yeah. I know. I remember doing that on Guards as well. Guards is another little indie, but that was just like two guys, and didn't do a Mordhau with that. It was actually a first person hack and slash as well, medieval style.
Mhm.
When you're the medieval guards running around a city, like stopping perps. It's like a dystopian, dread
Hmm.
fueled game. But yeah, we were hunting down playtesters and just being like, could you just go to the saved folder and then go to this folder
Yeah,
and then just send us the
exactly.
send us the logs, please. That sort of stuff. Yeah, it's hard. It's yeah. When you're scrappy, it's crazy like that. And so yeah, a lot of my work comes into blueprint scrappy, sort of like solutions
Mhm.
driven, like we were speaking about off cam. Um, yeah, let's have a look at something cool here.
Yeah.
Let's jump in.
So this first thing here, I put this together sort of when I was between jobs and found myself bored of the eternal weekend that is unemployment. Um,
Hmm.
between baking cookies, I was cooking this plugin up, and
Nice.
it started really as a desire to recreate the uh, infinite spiral wheel that you see in the Prey 2017 game.
Okay, I'll
Um,
bring it up. Let's go see if I can find
yeah,
that.
so you could just Google Prey 2017 like weapon wheel spiral. There's a video where someone shows it off because that's the first game where I was playing this game and so there's a regular like radial wheel, right? And if
Yeah,
you favorite more items than the wheel can hold, it turns into this infinite spiral. And
yeah,
that's one of the
yeah,
first things, like as I'm playing the game, I'm like, I don't really know how they did this. This is like magic.
yeah.
Usually you can
Right.
look at a UI thing and try to like reverse engineer it in your mind, but I'm looking at this and wasn't super experienced at the time either, but I'm like, man, this is just super cool. It's kind of lived in my head rent free since then.
Yeah, absolutely. I see
And,
what you mean. I see in UMG usually like panels and this
yeah.
is not that. Yeah, this is very different.
Yeah, you can sometimes you see like a default scroll bar or something, or like something that gives it away. But
Mm.
this is like okay, there's nothing out of the box that would give you that kind of result. And it's the same with like the Beyond Good and Evil keyboard spiral, which is I think what inspired your
Mm.
spiral radial wheel.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
at the time, that was like the only two games that like that I could find anything that had this sort of implementation.
yeah.
I actually did end up finding a third application, and it was something for like using a gamepad on your computer through Steam, and like that was the keyboard
Oh wow,
option was
yeah.
like this radial spiral, but it's such a like niche widget that you can't really find anything for like how to build this thing. So
Right.
like okay, I'll just give it a shot.
Yeah.
Um, so what resulted? So I'll just give a short demo of what this looks like. So I can open it up, and here we have the radial spiral, and right now the data is basically it's the alphabet, and you can kind of keep going around, and then it goes into some numbers, and I put a couple spaces and some symbols here, and then it loops back around, and so it's infinite. You
Cool.
can kind of just keep going. You can
Yeah.
use the scroll wheel, um, and you can click them and select them, and as you scroll through and come back, they're still selected.
Hmm.
Uh, and
That's
this
cool.
was also built with pooling in mind. So like as these entry widgets go off, we reuse it on the other end. So it's like taking it off the head, putting it on the tail, and
Yeah.
kind of repeating that.
So
Um,
less creation and destruction of widgets and like keeping them in memory once they're built. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. There was a bit of a focus on performance. I can't say I nailed it, but there's some things that were built with that in mind. Um, so I'd like to quickly just show something. So if I were to use the widget reflector,
Yeah.
all of our favorite tool, I can pick I can pick the widget here, which is this radial strategy widget. We'll get to the whole strategy thing here. Um, the basis of this, like I said, is coming from Prey, where their radial thing, it acts like a wheel or a spiral. It can kind of like go from one to the other.
Yeah.
And so I wanted an approach where like I could go like from a wheel to a spiral. Okay, it's completely broken, but you can get the idea where we go from wheel mode to spiral mode. This is fine.
This
Yeah,
is fine.
this is
Yeah.
fine.
It's the name of the stream.
Yeah, this is it's demos. This is how it goes. So okay, I think that's gonna happen every time I close by. Um,
Oh
so
yeah,
anyway,
fair, fair, fair.
there was a time where that worked, where I could just
Hmm.
switch the strategy in here, and it would actually update live in the viewport.
I actually didn't know
Um,
you could do that. That's actually new to me. Is this a C++ specific capability, or would this work if it was a user widget in Blueprint? Could you just switch parameters at runtime like that?
I think you can switch exposed parameters. This is a
Huh.
like an instanced U object. So this part here, choosing different strategies, this sort of thing might be more of a C++ centric thing. But like even in general, you can go to like any widget here, like the overlay, and you can kind of play with it
I did not
live
know
in the
you could
widget
do that.
reflector.
Wow.
Uh,
That's
it's
news to me.
not. It doesn't save though, so that's kind of something to note. Like
That's fair.
if you make
Yeah.
changes here and you stop pi, it's going to go away. But it's kind of nice for just playing around and if you want to
Yeah.
test things
Yeah.
out quickly.
I always
Uh,
use it to in projects that I'm not familiar with to find out what I'm looking at. But and then obviously for invalidation I use it. But
mhm.
um, no, this is really cool. What are all these
So I
debug
don't know
lines?
how well it's coming across on stream, but
Mm.
part of this was also building out some really solid debugging capabilities to be able to
Wow.
really tell like what is happening, because this turned into a vastly overcomplicated system. And like let this be a bit of a warning for like systems should be simple, not like this. I thought it was reasonable at the time, but I made this like 7 8 months ago, maybe more. Coming back to it, I'm like I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, having
But
these
having
debug tools
debugging
helps.
tools,
Yeah, right. Helps you get back into the flow of what you were writing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you can kind of see here actually, right past the head, there's actually like a couple widgets that are like invisible.
Mm.
Um, so there's like a setting somewhere in here. Yeah, the number of deactivated entries. So kind of the idea was like, what if you wanted a widget to animate in when it comes into view?
Mm.
Then it needs to exist before just kind of popping at the head. So if it exists out there, then when it becomes active, then we can animate something in, animate it something out.
Yeah,
Um,
that's nice.
didn't fully get that one working either, but that is the case. Um, this is pretty fun. We can
Oh,
boost up the number of visible entries. Also got another checkbox here just to see the bounds of each widget, because it is instantiating basically all these entry widgets around. I tried to make this thing work as much like a list view as I could.
yeah,
So on sort of the container side, it's like I have this widget, choose some default settings, and then you can basically just I think I'm doing it in code somewhere. You basically just like give it a bunch of UObject items, and it'll
yeah.
make entries for whatever the default entry class is.
For the
Um,
number that are visible, so that you've got like a pretty static cost overhead that you can track, and
mhm.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like it would take any sort of data that you give it, and through interfaces and stuff just kind of make it work.
Yeah,
Um, there's also a thing, again, I don't really know how much it would work right now, but I wanted it to have capabilities where, with the list view, like you give it one entry widget class, and like that's the one it uses for everything in the list.
right,
Um, but it's like, what if you wanted different pieces of data to be able to say, hey, show me as this widget class, or show me as that widget class.
right, right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
I did
it has
something like that.
that functionality.
Oh, it does. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. I say it has that functionality. No guarantees it's gonna work. But this is stuff that like it was in a working order to some extent at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
at least as the plan and sort of like preparing for that as you're building it out is like a really interesting. Um,
mhm.
it's a feature that yeah list views don't have, and so for anyone watching who's like, what's a list view? It's um, similar to what we're discussing here. It's pooling and caching widgets so that we're not having to create and destroy them all the time. And so um, when you've got a scroll list as an example, or a shop UI or an inventory maybe that has off-screen elements, you're not paying the paint and layout cost for things that are off the screen. And then same in this case, we could have like potentially hundreds of these entries, but we're only paying for the 8 or the 40 that are drawn. And yeah, there's so many controls you've got in here for like yeah for managing its appearance, which is super cool.
Yeah,
I like
you.
that.
It's
That's
really
really
fun to
cool.
just play with, and you can make some really wild stuff. Um,
Yeah, so you've
you
got
know,
two on screen right now that are reading from the same. Are you reading from like a
yeah.
data packet essentially?
Yeah, so it's like, you give it this list, here's the data that I want to show.
Mm,
And it's basically got like a way of mapping like because you can scroll sort of infinitely. So you can imagine an unbounded index that could go negative, it could go positive, it could just be whatever value. And then that can map back to a specific data asset or data index. So, we might be here at data at like I called it global index. We might be at global index like 600, which maps to the data index 3, which is like a real value, a real thing. Um, so yeah, it is a kind of a fun thing to play with. You can end up in some weird scenarios where you end up with like the same widget showing multiple times. So you can see like the hover here is kind of um, like it's affecting multiple widgets,
Oh, because it's like a
sort of.
almost like MVVM. It's like a hovered state on that particular data point is hovered.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's like
But it works okay
it's
because of the opacity of it. It's still
yeah,
readable.
yeah. I have like it's a bit of like I'm not sure exactly where I'm even doing it. I think it might be in the entry itself. But yeah, it's like basically your distance away. I call it like the distance factor. So your distance away from the pointer, where it's like our focused point,
Yeah.
is you get some kind of factor. So you can see it kind of tints a bit green and then a bit red, depending on that distance factor. So it gets like a bit green, sort of near the middle, and a bit more red at the edges.
Oh, right.
Uh,
I
and that's
understand
what
that.
this
Yeah.
distance factor turn threshold is all about. It's kind of like how many turns do we have away from the pointer point.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
this
could
thing is, yeah, it's kind of wild.
the segments each have a radius as well? So you could be like, oh, it's like if it's 90, it's gonna just be a radial of quarters.
Hmm. Yeah. So speaking of that, we can crack open the material and take a look
Oh
at how
yeah, yeah.
that works. Now, uh, just a word of caution: materials and shaders are not my strong suit. Like, if anything, that's my weak suit. That's like the thing I'm not great at. But through like a week of trial and error, I got this radial widget thing to work. So I'll see if I can keep that up on screen while I find. Oh, I already had it
Oh
open.
yeah, that's a good point actually for clarification is as you go into this material here, these are not widgets drawn traditionally drawn widgets. Those individual elements, or are those? Well, I'm guessing the letters that are in there are.
Yeah. So these are each one actually is a separate entry widget.
Yeah.
Um, so we actually have, 120 something widgets being rendered right now. I can paint their borders, right? Um, so this does have a cost, right? Every time you have more widgets, especially as they start moving and having to update, you can see the frame time climbs up there.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah. Because we're
yeah,
transforming a whole bunch of them, right? Yeah. But obviously,
yeah,
you're not going
because
to do this in a real game. Well,
yeah, yeah. This is
I
it's a bit of
not for this.
extreme.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah.
if you're to have this much you'd probably have to find some other clever way of doing it.
Just bring the
But
reference
if,
back up. But just as a quick reference for anyone watching it, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 15 elements on this guy's wheel, and then it fades out. This is from Prey. And it can go infinitely, obviously, but yeah, through some smoke and mirrors, we wouldn't be drawing 120 elements. And then
yeah,
yeah, now
exactly.
we're down to like the 1 ms, like little
Yeah,
cost.
so if I go to 15, it's like it's butter. There's kind of
Yeah,
no overhead
nice.
almost.
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, like I say,
I
it's
was
drawn
doing
through. Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah.
yeah, I was doing a lot of profiling at one point, and this material was one of the bottlenecks.
Mm.
But it wasn't really so much the material itself, which I'm glad that I kept it relatively organized, so you can sort of see what is happening a little bit. But the main bottleneck, and excuse the somewhat messy blueprint, was this here. So I have an event that's being called, and this event has it's passing in basically this material data, which is the struct that has these normalized values for the UV offsets, basically the angle at which it is around the wheel, how wide we want this wedge to be, all sorts of these different values. Uh, and so it comes in here in Blueprint, and then we're kind of going and setting all these values on the material one by one
To
in sort of
to
phases.
control a wedge and its angle and its thickness and its color and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of as it's going around, because that was one of the key elements, was like, well, how can we get this thing to scale properly to actually be truly dynamic as it's coming in, as it's going out.
Yeah.
And so that thing, and I mean, we don't have to spend too long in the C++ because it's a bit crazy. Um, but in here somewhere, I think it's actually in the radial one. I've got a lot of crazy stuff in here. Material here, construct material data. So I got this beefy function that it takes in the widget. Again, that global index that I mentioned, which is going to eventually somehow map that, and then the material data that we want to actually give to the widget. And so this is where it's doing all the math to convert. This is the angle that the widget is sitting at compared to the center of the radius, to construct basically all these parameters.
Yeah, the
Um,
nice part is that's done in C++, where the overhead of that math on any kind of
mhm.
scale is far faster than the 10 times slower blueprint side.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is not at all like really a bottleneck. It's the part where this ends up, yeah, here where it ends up executing the setting the material data. And the main reason that this becomes a bottleneck is, if you think about it, we have, potentially like 60 some odd widgets in the radius. If we take like a big scale number, right? For each one, every frame that it's moving, it's having to do this. So
Yeah.
every frame that it moves, it has to update the material. It can't really cache anything. So it really adds up.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. But it's good to know where that is so that you can think about solutions for that if we had to.
mhm.
But that's cool. No, I
It,
love it.
it's I
I
think
need to get familiar with C++, I think, in terms of, especially when it comes to MVVM, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because I
yeah
think that that's where your sort of subsystem backend, um, or any kind of like component driven data is going to, again only for larger teams, I would say, because I think if you're in a 2 to 3 man team, you're not going to have people jumping into the widgets, or like you're going to handle pretty much a whole area. So as an indie,
mhm.
um, some of these things are super useful. Like even for an indie, like the widget reflector, understanding this and knowing that you can do certain things with it and naturally like get yourself some performance profiling benefits, the debugging tools, like all these kind of things are absolute benefits even as a small team, because you want to be honest, like with your production, like you don't just want to like slam stuff in.
Yeah,
But I would always, in my land of having done Blueprint for 16 years, it's like I'm okay with that on small projects. Anything team size large, or imagine if you had made a 6 year game. I probably don't want to be making a long term game in Blueprint. Oh, this is super cool.
Yeah.
2,000 entries. Oh my god.
Yeah, well, this is kind of just like limit testing a bit. You can give it potentially thousands of pieces of data,
Yes.
but it's virtualized, so it's only making the entries really that you can see, the relevant ones. Um,
Can you define
so
virtualized as well for the
yeah,
viewers?
absolutely. So virtualized, it means that your actual piece of data, so the thing that informs what you want to show. So in this case, the piece of data is a number. It's a number in the list. Um, when when we're because what we're doing here when we're rotating through, you can think of it like scrolling. Like imagine we have just like a regular list and we just kind of wrapped it around itself. And so what happens is when one of these entries goes off the end of the list and it's no longer considered like relevant, um, it goes into a pool, and then then the other end of the list can pick out of that pool this widget and then give it new data, and it can show back up. And so we're not incurring the overhead of creating and destroying 2,000 widgets and only seeing like a dozen or so. Instead, we're creating the dozen or so widgets that we can see, and we're reusing them over and over, and just like giving it fresh data every time that it comes back. Uh, so any kind of list or tiles, or so something like a store or an inventory, you definitely want to make sure, or like a friends list, definitely want to make sure those are virtualized. Um, these are lessons I learned by doing it the non-virtualized way.
Yeah.
In Mordhau, there is you could make loadouts basically and save different loadouts for your characters, and there's not really a limit to how many loadouts you can have. And the initial implementation, it was just a vertical box in a scroll box, and it's like, yeah, that works. How many loadouts are people really going to make?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you find
well,
out.
yeah, turns out people got really good at finding like, oh, you could take this config is where the loadouts are stored, and here let's start sharing our loadouts, and let me just click and download this loadout and download that loadout. And turns out, when you have 1,000 loadouts, and this is the default page that comes up when you press escape, yeah, you get a big hitch every time you press escape,
Yeah.
because it's making 1,000 list entries, but you're only seeing the ones that are there. So virtualization is a really important way of improving that performance, and it's a good just practice in general. I think of thinking about the presentation of the data separately from like the storage and handling of that data.
I've been wanting to do something because the virtual textures that you get in Unreal Engine now for like landscapes, right? Like using a virtual texture to sort of do a grid-based map where you can sort of have those layers all loaded, and then zooming into one portion of like a
Mm.
Zelda map, it gets more detailed as you go in, and somehow maybe using virtualized textures, or it's called just runtime virtual textures in Unreal. But that's been something that I've been thinking about when it comes to like the virtualization of it. But yeah, there's other knock-on effects to like these massive lists of data that we don't manage if we're early days in sort of like UI development. When it takes so long to load that thing, you get some race conditions happen, and suddenly you're an unstoppable powerhouse inside the multiplayer game. Well, it's all client side, so we maybe not too much to worry about. I suppose if you've got bad engineering code, then yeah, you get some crazy other knock-on effects. But yeah, this
Yeah,
is wild. This is really cool, and I'm glad
yeah.
we got to like look into this, because when I look back to my Spiral UI that I did on stream, and I looked at um, the performance impacts of it, just sort of towards the end of the stream, and I look back at that stream now. I look at, I'm like, oh, it was 10 ms, now it's 4 ms. We saved some things. That's way better. And I look at it and I'm like, 4 ms for one wheel in a game where you should probably have like 1 ms or less for your entire UI.
Mhm.
Um, it was a really bad one for what I did there. And this, I actually went off cam and I tried to do some pooling after our conversation, because you jumped into that stream and were like, I did a material version.
Yeah,
Um,
I caught it just a bit after work, I think, and I'm like, oh, like someone is actually doing this. Like, I was actually gonna suggest to you on LinkedIn, that this like infinite spiral thing would be a cool challenge, and then like a couple days later, you were doing it. So,
yeah. The next one I wanted to do was like there's a TV show called Shield Hero, where he like brings up this, essentially it's like an orb of skill tree, like an
Mhm.
orbic skill tree where you can like span this. this orb and it's got all these dots, and then that's also virtualized. So it
Mm,
looks like a sphere, but it's actually just infinite scrolling as far as many as you want, right?
yeah.
And then someone made it in like Rive or so,
Interesting.
or Unity or something like the next day. So yeah, in this little UI sphere, we're all thinking along the same tracks of like, how can we push it?
Yeah.
What can we
Uh, I,
learn?
I think we all like to see something novel,
Yes,
and
yeah.
something like this is very like it has that novelty factor of like, whoa, like that's I haven't seen that before. You get a lot of radial wheels, but not a lot of spiral wheels, and you can kind of take it in different directions. Um,
Yeah, so I enjoyed about the Steam Next Fest. I played a bunch of stuff over the weekend, and there were some really novel, interesting solutions out there. Oh, I see what's happening here. Yeah, the
yeah,
widget has
so
like the
you can,
max size and the
yeah,
clipping.
yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's one of the things I learned is like, the widget actually needs to be big enough to hold the like arc radius size of the wedge as it scales out towards the edge of the screen, and you find these by limit testing, but it's kind of fun to play with, like,
I
how
wonder how
many
much
how
the.
many
Oh yeah, yeah. How many exactly? Yeah,
how
I
many
mean,
things
this
can we
is
fit?
what I'm loving about watching you do this is the testability of this. Just generally, like the system you've come up with and the tools in the back to fiddle with it are great because you get to do all those A/B tests and sort of
Hmm.
get your convictions like pretty nailed down about what you can say about the limitations of a system, which is really important, I think, when you're either the sole or leading the production of a UI piece. Like you need to have those convictions,
Hmm.
just as if you're doing an environment or a character or any kind of art or programming. So yeah, this is super cool.
Yeah, and I do think it makes for an instructive moment where having limitations and restrictions and uh, like a clear goal in mind can really help. Because with this, I achieved the spiral thing, and then I was like, oh, but what if it was more generic? What if it was more reusable? What if it was more? And as it went more and more in that direction, it started to lose, kind of lost the direction of what is it actually going to be. It's trying to do way too much, and I had ambitions for this where it's like, okay, what this is under the hood is it's a system where you can have just some arbitrary data and show it on screen in some arbitrary position, and it's kind of mapped to different indices. It's like, well, what other features in a UI do stuff like that? It's like, well, you have like world markers that are floating around, map markers, compass markers. So like anything like that, I'm like, oh, this system would be awesome for it. Uh, and it might, but at the same time, like you need to know what you're expecting in terms of the limits of your own sort of system that
I think
you're
that's
the feature that you're looking at.
yeah, I think that's one of the things I find hardest with like experimenting. Like, um, you start making these homogeneous solutions because you don't have a use case, like a specific like we're making prey. This is our weapon wheel. It will only ever have
Mhm.
40 things in it, and then making
Yeah,
decisions based on that. If you come up with those decisions yourself and like hard code, like write them down and have that as your limitations, like perfect. But generally when I'm experimenting, I sort of go down that same rabbit hole where I'm like, oh, this is actually I could blah, 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 blah. And I start going off on these like interesting tangents, still learning
yeah,
and still experiencing like good lessons and good discoveries. But yeah, I definitely hear you there. It's like it's different beast producing something uh, with constraint versus experimenting completely freely and sort of making
hmm
these homogenous solutions that the tidbits though the tidbits you get out of those kind of experiments are great.
yeah,
You get to pull from them, especially when it's like things like written in C++. It's far easier to parse between projects, right?
hmm yeah. It's definitely the case. I mean, the way that it's sort of um, built and everything, like it's very extensible, uh, but like I don't know. It's tricky to really. I wrote the damn thing, and I have a hard time debugging it and figure out what's going on. It's like it's too multi-purpose, and in a word, it's just too complex. And that's something that I've learned a lot sort of over the past while is just the cost of complexity. Where like as when you're implementing something, you're immersed in it, you have it every map of it, yeah, every corner of it mapped out in your mind. You know exactly where to go to look into something, where to go to extend something. But it's when you come back to this complex system and you have to work in it, or someone else has to work in it, and they don't have your knowledge, then it's a lot of a lot of head scratching
Yeah,
for
keeping
something
things.
that could just be simple. You could just get the result for what you're trying to do.
Someone in chat says witchcraft is happening right before my eyes. Yeah, if you've just joined, go watch the VOD because like we spoke about loads of cool stuff about this wheel. Should we take a look at MVVM? So
Yeah, let's do it.
to introduce that conversation, I did a stream a couple of days ago just to like a little refresher on MVVM, watching Irene Zannon's talk on it, where she looks at MVVM and I think it was like common activatable widgets, and they show like some cool processes with that, but you get the project files and you're kind of like dumped straight in there, and you haven't like really started from scratch. And so um I'm going through this process of like relearning this because like a year ago when it first came out I used it and I made some cool stuff with it, and I had like sets drawn on screen for like certain things. That was a cool little process, but I haven't touched it since. And so lately I've been asking people like, have you used MVVM? What have you learned? What are your convictions about it? um So yeah, what have you got on the screen?
Yeah.
What's this?
So a bit of background with me and MVVM. So we didn't use any MVVM stuff on Mordhau. It didn't exist back then. Neither
Yeah,
did
yeah.
Common UI. It was entirely just UMG jank. Um,
Delegates
in
everywhere.
yeah, at Torn Banner, we used Common UI, but we didn't use MVVM. It wasn't really quite there yet, but Common UI is, it's very useful.
Hmm.
And now on our current project, we are using Common UI and MVVM. We've extended it in different ways, but basically coming onto this project, I'm like, okay, you guys are using MVVM. Let me go learn how to use MVVM. Let me figure this thing out.
Yeah,
So I spent a bunch of time, going online, reading about MVVM, and this, it's like a very well established architecture.
yeah,
Um, and you get into Unreal, and and it turns out that an inversion of that architecture actually works a little bit better. It's something I'm kind of finding I appreciate a bit more. And what I mean by that, let me just crack open Paint real quick. This is gonna be just quick and dirty. Uh,
Pirate.
Typically, right
You're getting your pirate
in
software out.
sorry, but this is an important point
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but when I go to explain what's happening there in Unreal. So like typically, you have your model, you have your view models, right? And you have your view, which is like your widgets.
Hmm.
So you go online, you look at MVVM, right? And it looks like this. Your view models know the model, and the view knows the view models. And it's like a very one-way sort of dependency chain. And like conceptually, it makes sense. It's like, okay, the widgets only need to know about the data coming from the view models, doesn't need to know anything else. The view models, they just need to know where they're getting their data from. They don't care who's using them. Like conceptually, it makes sense. But the inversion I'm talking about is actually something that looks a bit like this, where you keep your view models really dumb. And by dumb, I mean, like, think like a stateful snapshot. They don't hold much logic at all. It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
an object that holds variables in a certain state, so booleans and stuff. It's just like, you could take the view model at any certain point, and it's like, this is the snapshot of the current state of the view model. The UI in the view is reflecting that, right? And the model is pushing updates into the view model. The view model is not asking for updates.
Hmm.
So this is essentially like the way that I have this little demo project set up. So I wanted to clear that up because I spent so long learning MVVM, and it was the one-way directional thing, and it's
Yeah.
something else to think about.
I've seen it used in other ways, right? Because it's like you can have, because MVVM in the editor, it has the capability of like pushing information to that view model from the
Mhm.
UI. So say you click a button and you're like, hey, you know what? We've changed state. We're in state dirty now for whatever it is, like trash my
Yeah,
item or something was from the Irene one, and that you can go back and then that will update the model. But that's kind of like non-authoritative, especially if you're working in multiplayer. Um,
Mhm.
And the way I was seeing it was like, hey, if your model is the authority on everything and it's pushing it into that view model, and your view is just a representation of that snapshot,
Hmm.
then you're in this kind of like system authoritative version. And then if you're doing two-way, where you're allowing your view to edit the view model, it's like it's non-authoritative, or it's at least going to need some sort of like fallback logic where it's like,
Hmm.
well, the user pressed a button, they allowed us to change a variable on the view model, which I find bizarre, and I think you shouldn't do that, even though you're capable of doing it, because you're going to have like desyncs in your model, right? But then your model is going to update your view model again at some point to say, hey, no, that should be actually false, and that kind of makes me think of it like in fighting games you call it like rollback,
Hmm.
where it's like the UI could update a state in MVVM in Unreal, and then the model could inform it that like, no, that shouldn't be true, that should actually be false, or
Yeah.
it should be 5, not 3. But generally what we're trying to do, what I understood from just like my refresher and just like years of
Hmm.
like having known about it, is like we're trying to just simply decouple the business logic from the view as it should be, so that people can
Yeah.
design UI and people can design systems, and they meet in the middle where there's a nice snapshot that is that stateful, like you said, like a stateful snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that I go about it in this demo, and it's sort of the way that I've been preferring it recently,
Yeah,
is so yeah, the model, it very much is, this is the source of truth. It has like the full authority. It owns the view model. Like on the code side, the model, which usually in my case is a subsystem. In this uh, plugin demo, it's actually an object, because I was playing with, you could actually make the model in Blueprint and implement all this stuff in Blueprint or C++.
yes, yeah.
I was trying to sort of generalize it a bit, but in essence, it's something that makes and owns the view model, and the model is like, hey, this is my view model. And then on the widget side, you can use a resolver. So here, like, I have my store view model, and we can use a resolver to ask the model, hey, can you give me the store view model? And then make sure you always get the same instance of it. So if you wanted to show this sort of store data anywhere else, it's very easy. Just add the store view model. You can just grab the same instance from the resolver, and you're good to go.
The
Um,
resolver is like, if I remember, it's like it will go and say get the game state and pull a component from it, like, and it just makes sure that it's resolving from the same location every time.
Yeah, it's basically just a thing that knows, so that the view asks it, and it's a thing that
Yeah,
knows where to go to get the view model, right? It could be
yeah.
anywhere. In this case, it's the model, and then it grabs the view model and then gives it back to the view.
In
It's
non
very spaghetti
MVVM,
there.
like before that, like Starship Troopers was that way, where it was before MVVM, it was before Common UI. We hadn't upgraded to like 5.4. I think we were on like 5.1, or well, so maybe we had some of these capabilities, but so early on we
Mhm.
didn't trust it, and so yeah, we had um, our stat, if you call it statics, I suppose in programming maybe, is like we can get this from anywhere. We just use between function libraries to do that. So we're like,
Mhm.
oh, we want to get the was it the marker registry for our world map
Mm,
that also powers our
right.
compasses, it powers our in-world view, like it's one registry of information. And so
Mhm.
we'd use function libraries for that. But here we have like these nice new resolvers that make that a lot. Again, it's like it's compartmentalized code, right? So this
Yeah.
resolver, it can be used in loads of places, it's easy to maintain.
Yeah, and in this case, like, I've built this, just it's a generic resolver
Hmm.
where I can just pick what model I want to ask
And a
and
name.
what
Yeah.
view model I want to ask it for. And
So
if
so
it
it like
doesn't have it, you
registers
don't get it.
into, is it like registering into a key map or something then for the name?
So it's registering into, and this is a thing I don't think really exists on the blueprint side.
Right.
Um, but it registers into this view model collection is what it's called.
Oh, I've seen these, yeah,
Um,
because the global collection for view models was something that was in the tutorial that was
mhm.
name driven as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
view model collection,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, store view model collection. I thought I had something somewhere. Model instances. Yeah, it's been a little bit, so I've dug through here, but it's basically, um, if I actually, maybe if I go to the resolver, right? I have the class and the name, and in here I'm making this view model context, which takes the class and the name, bundles them together, and then we try to get the view model with that and it asks the collection basically. But you can, yeah, because there's the global collection that kind of comes with MVVM.
Yeah,
I've sort of built my own global collection here, using very much the same approach.
right.
Uh,
But it's like a class that you own that you could iterate on and expand upon if necessary. Like it's easier. I guess
yeah,
it's nice to debug as well because you're able to like step through that code. It's like it's native to your system basically.
and when you're going through the resolver and you know you're getting the exact instance that you want from the model that you want versus the global collection, it's not really, it's a bit looser as to who owns that view model because you're getting it just from this collection. You're not getting it from like a specific authoritative place. Now,
Oh, that's
there
a
are
good
still
point as well.
times
Yeah,
where,
you might want to have a collection per inventory on a character,
Mhm,
and that
yeah.
collection is like owned by a specific object in the game. As the global is not going to help you with that unless you like
Mhm.
iterate names where it's like, yeah,
Yeah, you might want to just like I want to ask you for this view model.
yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah,
cool
we
then.
could
Yeah, yeah,
we can see here. This is where like so my model it gets initialized, and this is where off the bat if we don't have a valid store view model, which we're probably not going to, we make the view model. We give it just an initial like none state, which I have like a whole tagged based state thing going on, and then just here I have my view model collection as part of the store and just add the instance and it's just class and then the name and the instance of it. So you can always make sure you're getting that same instance back.
yeah,
Uh, but I've had this open this whole time. Let me just demo what this thing actually does.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's very ugly. I apologize for that. This was very much just a tech demo. Um,
So funny,
but
like
this,
programmer talk just like sidetracks this whole thing from like it's
yeah,
been open for
there,
20
there's
minutes.
there's plenty of rabbit holes we could get stuck in.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Let's have a look.
Yeah, so this is basically like a store, right? So you can select things, I want this and I want this and this, and we can purchase, and we've got this like whole loading thing that happens. And we could search, and it's kind of like got like a live search, and we can purchase, and we could filter by these different tabs. I guess some of those are empty. I've bought all of them, and also filling it up with mock data for because I didn't want to have to make a bunch of actual bespoke things. But some of these I actually have real data I'm pulling from,
Yeah,
and I could purchase those, or I can just sell these back and gain some currency back.
cool.
Um, and there's this like debug sort of text up here that sort of tells you like the current state of things and the status right now like we're previewing. So if we wanted to have like a details panel that updates as you're hovering on things, it's we have that data coming in. um,
Does that get fed from like data assets or tables or
yeah, I
some
think I think I have it coming from just this table
table?
here.
Yeah. And then the
um,
mock data, of course. Yeah.
yeah, then the mock data is just sort of like iterating as many that I want.
What's
um,
your point of view on like when to use data tables versus data assets and the sort of
uh,
limits because there are some limitations in tables, right?
Yeah, I think data assets generally are probably better, because you can collect them into a data registry, which is basically like a data table.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're
but
like
in this case, I was just
bundling them.
lazy and I just wanted one place just to kind of have
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I always tend to now think of it as like, well, structs, at least in Blueprint, and I don't know if they can be extended in C++, but you can extend them. But a data asset you can. So if you've got like
Mhm.
item data asset and then you've got like ranged item or consumable item or
Yeah.
usable, then you could add additional data to the definition of an asset. But keep your top levels more, what do you call it, like mutable? Um, or immutable. You can basically read them as their base class version and then cast as needed um,
Hmm.
for the lower end objects, and then store all your items in an inventory as assets. Whereas the data tables, I end up using them for things that I generally know that the scope is never going to change or is never going to be extended. So like credits are a great example. It's like credits in a
Yeah.
game, I'm probably going to have a couple of properties, but we're not going to extend a credit into a subcredit class. Like, so a
Yeah.
struct in a data table is perfectly fine. That's how I like to tend to make that decision. So how did you split your just go back to the view models? It's like, how did you split your models? Do you have like one master shop or do you have like shop and then you've got your user inventory on the other side there?
Yeah, so here I've just got, as part of the view model, my array of, this is all the available items, which populates this list, and it's just my favorite part of MVVM is like this is like the part where it clicked for me. It's just I have all of these things and just push them into the list, and the list
Yeah.
view just kind of handles it.
Yeah,
So
right.
my
It's lovely.
available items and then the owned items over here, category tabs. So same thing, just getting pushed in there. Um, so the model side, this is actually sort of modeling. The idea was like, uh, something that you frequently have to do in more sophisticated online sort of services is, I want to purchase this and it has to make a back end request.
Right.
Um, right. So that's kind of what this is modeling with these like loading and everything. So there's like
Hmm.
a mock data backend basically running under this, and I can tweak here different things. So like you can make really kind of funny. You can make like a really infuriating UX by just increasing the random delay for certain things or the failure chance for certain things.
Oh
So
yeah.
as I kind of go about it, kind of, oh, I ran out of money. I have to sell stuff. Right? You can make some things take a little bit longer, maybe even crank that up to 5 seconds. I want to have a, there we go, 50% chance we hit an error. Of course, this one I forgot to add any error text.
It's just like
I
a
think one
random
of these,
error, yeah. And one of them
yeah, I
doesn't have
think
text.
I can guarantee that this one fails, and it's got a bit of a delay. Yeah, here you go. Failed to load store items. Hit OK, and it's gonna try to refresh every time, but I guaranteed the failure, so it's just always gonna fail.
This is
Um,
really cool because it's like simulating the handling for anyone on the project, right? Whether you're an engineer or a designer and you want to handle what
mhm,
that looks like or how it behaves. That's super cool.
yeah.
How do you set up these console variables?
This is it's a plugin actually that comes with Unreal,
I think I've seen
called
it, but I've never used it. Oh right,
called
yeah.
Console Variables Editor. So you turn that on, and then under Window, Console Variables, and you can basically just add one. And so I just added all of mine here, and then you can save them as a preset. So I've got them just saved, and you double click it, open it up, and it's a very convenient way of just having all of them, without having to build out all these properties in some other you know data place that's exposed.
Yeah, and then
Um,
so this is curated in Blueprint land or editor land, but then
mhm.
it's by tag readable through C++, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's in code is where it's pulling all of these and actually like implementing it. Under the hood, it's just regular timers. So like I just turned slow-mo to 10% speed. So if I purchase, things are gonna take a lot longer. And you can see how the store state is kind of going through. So right now it's currently like it's doing the purchasing, and then
Yeah.
after that it's gonna be, going to whatever the next state is. I don't remember, probably loading things or refreshing something. Um, but the states being tags here, it's something I've sort of built out. I just want to see if it's going to change to something. Also, you see I didn't disable this tab list while it's purchasing, so maybe that's something
The,
we could do real quick.
hmm.
Because when everything's very stateful, you can do these sorts of things, right? So if I add my tabs list, which I have here, I could do like is enabled. Oh, great! I can't actually click the bottom button. I can't.
Oh
It's
yeah,
clipping
but
off screen.
move your editor up and down, right? It's like the
Yeah, is
when you're messing with like collision channels. You've got
oh
like
this
wiggle the. Oh no, it's not gonna let you do it.
this is fine. Anyway, I'll conceptually do it. You can imagine that that was something, and then here I could probably just show how some of these others are set up. So I have this conversion function, which I love conversion functions with the MVVM plugin. They're awesome. Which is basically just checking store has state. So I give it the current store state, which the store view model has this gameplay tag container, store states. I just cleared it. That's a mistake.
Control
Control
Z.
V.
It's the crash button.
Yeah. Oh, I lost it. This is fine. Um, give it. This is the current state, and then this is the tag that I'm looking for. Which right now, like when I did this, I implemented it where like the currency loading tag is something I defined in here, store states, where I can add the gameplay tag. I later learned that you could actually do it straight up just in sort of in line with this thing.
Oh really?
Kind of lost myself. Yeah, because let's see, this has state function. I'm pretty sure I implemented in C++. Um, where is it? Has store state. Yeah, and you see it's taking gameplay tag reference. So it needs to actually reference an existing like gameplay tag variable. But if I didn't make this a reference, then I could just straight up like in the drop down here pick the gameplay tag that I want
Oh
instead of
wow,
having
yeah.
to bind it to an actual variable. Um,
Oh, fair.
something I
Yeah.
learned
So
after
you get
putting
the
this
actual
together.
gameplay tag container drop down to pick like
Yeah.
the usually you see it for a gameplay ability system. For anyone familiar with gameplay tags, I've noticed gameplay tags sort of seeping into so many parts of Unreal, and this is the first
Mhm.
time I've seen it sort of used in MVVM. It's really clearly quite powerful across the board. I used it in Unity a
Yeah.
lot. I use tags a lot in Unity,
Mm.
but but I don't often use it in Unreal um, outside of gameplay ability system stuff. So this is really cool
Right.
little tidbit to use it
Yeah.
for managing state, and then you could tie that into things like potentially state tree to maintain as like the model end in some cases.
Hmm.
So it's like really easy to see the flow of, let's say, screens in a game or something. I haven't seen
Hmm.
that done, but I have seen it suggested as like use state tree for your UI flow. I'm like, wow, yeah, could
I
do.
there's a blog post I think I saw someone he used state tree for the UI flow.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
okay. So it does
it is an
exist.
interesting application. Like, um, uh,
Find it.
yeah,
Sweet
there's a
tree.
lot of different ways you could potentially handle it. There's a plugin called Generic Graph, which is also pretty handy if you have the code chops to kind of extend this. Then you can actually graph out your menu and have like sort of transition elements and everything.
Oh
Um,
yeah, like the dialogue plugins that you get, where it's like your own node,
yeah.
slate node tree. I'd love. So these are the sorts of things I was talking at the very beginning of the call. Is like brushing up on. You can't know everything, but like
Hmm.
knowing that they exist is the cool part. And maybe having touched them once or twice. In terms
Yeah.
of just like broader knowledge, but like I've made editor utility widgets, but I haven't made a toolbar button at the top of the editor, and that requires, as far as I know, some C++. These graph systems that you can create. There's a free dialogue UI plugin that I think you can get off the marketplace that does this, where it's like very similar to a state tree with like animation, where you've got those nodes and you can color them however you want. They've got their own properties
Hmm.
and flow. I've never built one of those, but aren't those great tools for? This is more on, I'd say, systems engineering side than
Hmm.
like just UMG. But like, yeah, your example there is really great. It's like someone utilized that tool set to create a developer friendly user friendly way of creating some sort of flow through
Yeah.
like generic graph. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all about like I'm a big proponent of developer experience, like DX, right? And
Hmm.
having like when when you make a system and like a designer has to come in here and play, like it should be robust enough that they're not going to be hitting walls and crashing and stuff. And it should be like there's times where you're working on something and the iteration time, it could be like 2 minutes to reproduce the case where you're seeing the thing happen. And then, okay, you look at it, you remember it, close it down, make your changes. 2 minutes later, you're seeing it again, right? That can really add up and it can really just add friction to the whole developer experience. So trying to strip that back. So like in this example with the store UI, it's like instead of actually needing a backend up and running and all the complexity coming with that, we can focus on the complexity of the UI side and play with how things are gonna interact and work this way. Um, it's like isolating pockets of complexity because there's always like layers of abstraction kind of built on top of each other where you know on the surface you're pressing buttons and turning dials and it's very simple, but like under the hood it gets really really complicated. So
Yeah.
it's all about isolating that.
I love how much of it as well. Like, um, I th- I th- I feel like typical players would underestimate the amount of work that goes into crafting responsive and like yeah, UI systems basically. So MVVM
Mhm.
gives us that compartmentalization that you sort of mentioned there about um, splitting up responsibilities and essentially I would say was developed for developer experience as well as like performance, because you used to have
Mhm.
those old bindings, right, where it was just like on tick, and people would use
I
them,
used
and
to use
any
those all the time.
yeah, well, I'd always go to companies, and everyone would be like, never touch that thing, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it. And then now we have delegates everywhere that delegate events,
Mhm.
and it's everywhere. It's like it's just systemic across this entire code base. It's just like
Yeah.
delegates are your friend. Like you've just got dispatchers, sorry, like everywhere
Mhm.
for event-driven architecture, so that you're not doing that. But now with this, it's like that's all built in, and it reads
Yeah.
nice, and it's easy for a designer to come in and say, you know what, I actually want to do something else when selected view models becomes empty.
Mhm.
Or when selection mode becomes such and such. And I love it with the
Yeah.
tags, because you, as a designer with tags, you can go into the tag editor and add a tag and be like, this is
Mhm.
a tag that can now occur. I guess as long as you're, having that engineering conversation. But like
Mhm.
a designer could lead a discussion where he's like, I've implemented a tag. This is what happens in the UI when that occurs. And now it just
Mhm.
needs to be implemented as a state that can occur in the game where someone and so this comes back to gameplay ability system, I suppose, as well. From my experience, it's like now things can be poisoned
Mhm.
because I added that as a designer end. It wasn't blocked by programming, and there's like transactions that can happen there a lot more seamlessly and fluid. At
Yeah.
least for
Yeah.
prototyping and
Like
things like that.
my opinion is like the gold standard for designer experience is no nodes, no code. Right? If you
Yes,
can
yeah,
do
yeah.
it with no nodes and no code, then it's seamless. You're just pressing buttons. You're just filling out fields. Like it's
You're
it's
making good
very
content.
yeah. It's just very simple stuff. Um, I guess something I'd like to just point out here a little is the interaction side. So this is where like we're actually taking something from the view and we're flipping state on the view model. Like the view is actually changing the view model. Usually, right, it's the other way around. The model is pushing something into the view model. So in this case, and I don't necessarily say that this is like the best way to do it. This is one way that I found. It's
Yeah,
professionally like we do stuff that's a little bit different. Um, but here, like I have the store item button. So this is the button that is basically populating this list, right? And so we need to know when it's hovered. We need to know when it's interacted with, essentially. And so the item view model, which is the view model that backs this particular entry widget, it has an interaction structure on it. And this interaction structure just has a source, which is a gameplay tag, and a type, which is an enumeration. And so if you see here, we can take the store item button, which this thing basically inherits from the common button base. So it has like the button events sort of in it here, like focus, hovered,
yeah,
click.
yeah.
So when these happen, we take the item view model, we set the interaction, and we say, okay, on hovered, we set the interaction type is hovered, and the source is this widget source. And the source is kind of a bit of a band-aid for this particular issue where the instance of the widget is what's saying, hey, I'm interacted with. Um, but in this case here, you can see like I have these categories that are in this panel here,
Yeah.
right? But if you click on it, if you're just setting the interaction type, how do you know which button was the one that's clicked? Because they share a view model. You need to have like some context information saying, I was clicked and this is the source. So that's what, if you see up here, it says from interaction source dot available list. Um,
Yeah.
right here, source.tab list. So it's a way of just kind of being able to switch logic depending on what was selected or
Yeah,
where it was selected.
to bubble that information upwards in the event that it
Mhm.
affects outcomes, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
so we can basically see like in the logic here what happens. So, I've made basically like a macro binding just to make this easier, where I can bind. I have here's my view model, here's the variable I want to listen to, and when it changes, call this function. So item category interaction changed. This will get called whether I click on these categories or I click on this category, which right now this does nothing. Um, but if we look into actually what's happening, this thing changes. We pull the current state, and this is the sort of the important part of the whole paradigm is we have the view model so we can get the current state of it and then do stuff from the current state and then like set the state back. The best example that made it click for me is those useless machines where it's kind of like a box and it's a switch. I'll see if I can find just a quick thing. Basically, like something like this, right? Where it's got like a switch on it, and
Oh
you
yeah.
flick the switch, and then the machine, something happens, and the machine flicks the switch back. So this switch is your view model. It's a state. It's in some kind of state. The hand is obviously the user. The machinery inside is the model. So something happens, and then the model sets the state back. So here we can switch based on the type of interaction. If it was hovered, unhovered, we can do different things. If it's clicked, okay, so the user clicked a category. Let's see, was the source from a tab list? If it was, then we're going to want to filter based on the selected tab, right? If we wanted to add, a default behavior or switching behavior based on other interaction source tags, like we can kind of do all of that. And like I mentioned too, this is something I built out in such a way that we could theoretically, build it out in Blueprint as well, where we can like, get the interaction from here, switch on the type, and then particularly in Blueprint, or like because you can switch on the gameplay tags, right? So it's like, okay,
Oh
we're
yeah.
clicked. What did we click? We clicked, from interaction source, blah blah blah. You kind of get the picture. I don't know why
And
my
so
editor
yeah,
is.
we've got potentially different things that happen. And so one example, yeah, I mean, in both of those examples you showed there, it's like it's changing which tab you're viewing in one of those
Mhm.
models, in one of those view models for the list view, or changing a widget switcher, or however ends up being performed. But yeah, you could have much more
Yeah.
complex and bespoke handling for that. That's really cool. I really like that. That's a
Mhm.
really interesting way of handling that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, typically I would, yeah, yeah. Well, there's two things that come to mind. I would either blueprint and on click to do something and like call
Mhm.
to a subsystem and do some logic. Now, what I don't like about that, or what I'm trying to figure out how to get away from that, is well, we shouldn't have view directly grabbing subsystem blah and doing
Mhm.
things on it and calling services, right? Because now we're coupling them directly back to each other.
Yeah.
So instead, what we're saying is, I click this button, I push a state to the view model that the model is listening to the change event and then reacting,
Exactly. Yeah.
updating something else, such as the list of items that are shown, or making a purchase if the button state got pressed. So
Mhm.
then, so here's is this how you see this panning out then in a larger project? Like all your buttons have view models that they got clicked, that are
Uh,
then parsing up to models.
yeah, you could theoretically, or you could go more into the you could make it more specific, right? In this case, it's very generic where this button could be used in different contexts. Like it could be in the available list or the owned list. So you have to know which source it's coming from. Um, but generally, like it could be done a lot simpler where you just have, you could pull in like whatever your button is, it could be just a regular button, could be a specific widget. And then when this thing gets clicked, so like on clicked, I really wish I could actually do things. You
Yeah,
could
right. I know what you're trying to
then
say. I can't do
uh,
it. It's like stuck
you
somehow.
can work it in as more of like the user does something and it's like a request. So you flip the flag on the view model that's like, oh, this button was clicked. Let's say it's like a purchase button. It's like, flip the flag on the view model that says, user requested a purchase. And then the model is listening for that flag to get flipped. And then the model is like, okay, here's the callback. This flag got flipped. Let's get the current state of it. It's like, okay, user requested a purchase. And then you can kind of do validation on the model side of like, can we actually purchase something right now? Does
Yeah,
user
yeah,
have enough
exactly.
stuff, right? And then if not, you just set the flag back and you throw an error or something. You set an error state on the view model. You say, nope, you can't do that because of these reasons. And
That's kind of
that
where I
is
want to
still,
get to. It's
yeah.
where I want to get to next. Where I'm like, I'm starting to get some of those convictions on kind of the. It's almost it feels like boilerplate at that point, but it's for stability of a system. But
Mhm.
but it's less direct than it used to be, where I'm just like traditionally coding UMG. I'm just I've got some system, again, like an inventory or a button that purchases something, or maybe it's an entire like CAD based UI where I'm dropping things onto the canvas and I'm like on drag and on drop and on this event occurring. Like just go straight to a system that I know about from the game state. It's a component on there. I can get the game state from anywhere. I'm coupling all these things together, but I'm achieving results. And then you sacrifice that speed, of course, for stability, where you're saying like there's a lot more validation capable of happening across, making it very authoritative in the model. And I love that. I think that is going to obviously save headaches long term. In the short term, it might slow you down a little bit in terms of, but you're only going into this production level once you've done that discovery, that pre-production, and you're happy with the system, right? You're like, hey, let's build this properly.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have the reason to build it out in a certain way.
It comes back to what we said earlier. Yeah, it's like you can go down the sort of rabbit holes, but
if you try to make the everything machine, it won't be anything.
Yeah, it's the same what they say about like game projects, right? It's like if you make a game for everyone, you just made it for no one.
Yeah, exactly. So in this kind of little demo here, there's even when item interaction changes. So let's say we clicked on an item. I have here basically like these like client side checks. Everything here is actually on the client, but it's conceptual, right? So it's like, is the item owned? Then our transaction type, what we're trying to do, the intention, if we own the item and we select it, the only thing we can really do is sell, right? Otherwise, if we don't own it, then we check, can we afford it? If we can, then our intent is to purchase it, right? If we can't afford it, then our intent is nothing because we can't do anything. But like anything client side, it could potentially be hacked. And this transaction type, so it's just setting this value on the view model. And so somewhere in here is listening for that transaction type change. No, sorry, it's the
and then rechecking your wallet basically to be like, hey, potentially server end, did you have that money?
Yeah, so it's like when we want to request a purchase, we have this transaction request, which is these are the items that I want to purchase or the items I want to sell, right? Some kind of transaction. And then this is where it goes into I have it implemented as an interface, so the store provider interface, which if you work in like a big project where you're actually interfacing with backend systems, it's a lot of what it looks like is you have some interface that you're calling some function and you have some callbacks and you maybe give it some data. Right. And because, it's asynchronous stuff, you might get a failure, you might get a success. So that's where like you bind to the success, you bind to the failure, you do different things. And it's on the store backend side, the thing that implements this interface, which I call it a data provider, but it's just a subsystem that implements this data provider interface. And it's the one that actually, authoritatively handles currency and purchasing. So, we want to purchase something. This is like just the fake timer stuff that was happening, right? And then failure or success, and this is where we're actually taking your items and moving it from owned to available or vice versa, and deducting your currency. And this is the stuff that's theoretically happening on a server somewhere where like the user can't influence it. So you're actually doing the authoritative, can they purchase this thing? If not, it's a fail, something went wrong, right?
The thing that I was thinking of doing as a test for myself to like get familiar with some of these patterns is to do MVVM matching gameplay ability system. There are some rollback things with gameplay ability system, but I know there are some hookups for UI specifically in there. For like an action RPG, it's heavily documented all over the place on how to use the gameplay ability system. But then hooking that to MVVM and sort of having those, not necessarily a shop, but like stamina is a transaction that is similar to a shop, right? It's like, and if you're out of sync and what happens in those cases, and sort of like getting that. That's a project that I was thinking of whipping up to get my head around these. Just this change. It's just a more professional way of basically doing this. That coming from a blueprint and prototyping and previs sort of background, doing these systems more. I need to learn C++ is one of the things. I can read, write, debug code. I've scripted things. I've scripted loading screens and so on in C++. But there's a part of me that's like, go more into this, because this is becoming that status quo, and it has been for the last year. It's still infancy but we're seeing a lot more talks about MVVM. So I'm glad we got to go through it, and there's so many things you've shown me that I'm like, wow, yeah. Like, damn. I love the conversion functions. I've obviously been using those in the blueprint end. There's so much cool stuff here. But the tag stuff is like really smart way of, it's like we were saying earlier, it's novel solutions, right, to like UI problems.
But that's why I love these conversion functions too. Like I have implemented mine here in C++, but there are times, even professionally at work, where it's, this is a very specific conversion function. It's not one that we need to share amongst other things. So it's like you just whip open the graph, you make just like your conversion function here in the widget itself, and you can kind of use that just to like format the data into what you need it to do. Or
it's a nice naming convention as well, like conv_ this like makes it easy for people to come in to just know what we're looking at, similar to just like prefix your stuff.
One, this thing I took from actually that talk from that tutorial from Irene with the MVVM stuff, where if you have a function that is like on the receiving end is the destination of a view binding, to prefix it with VM underscore, just to make it very clear this is being called from the view model's change happening, and then this thing is going in.
What's an example of that though? Oh yeah. That's not a const or pure sort of like, that's an actual like functionality is happening event?
Yeah, it is. I actually do something similar. It's not a function, it's an event, but you can very much do it as a function here. So like in the store page widget, on store state changed, and we just get the state gameplay tag container. And this here is simply, if we find our current widget, on store state change, that's the event. And this is the view binding. So the store states, whenever this gameplay tag container changes, it's going to call this event here with this name and pass us in our new state. And from there, this is how I'm handling the modal pop-up. I'm actually making a view model for the modal, and do it a common UI stuff. And then basically the same pattern here. When we choose an option, we have to get the view model here, and then check what option did we choose, and then it gets a bit weird when you have to do stuff like this, but it's like
this is
clearing my own state.
You're field notifying local variables of a widget blueprint.
I didn't know you could do
that. So how do you listen to that in another blueprint?
So I listened to that, I think somewhere in the view bindings. Here. Error clicked. It's just refresh as requested on the view model side.
Yeah, because I've seen that field notify used obviously in the view model, because that's where we're listening to those things happening. But can we just use field notifies in just straight up blueprints? Say I have a reference to another blueprint and it had that with broadcast. Is there just like a straight up assign to such and such changed in blueprint? Like as a node?
There is. That's what I've done here. Add field value change delegate. Right.
So so you don't even need to write event dispatchers anymore if you don't if you want to handle it
pretty much.
Way.
Yeah, because I mean, under the hood, like these field notifies, they are delegates. They are event dispatchers.
Yeah, they are dispatchers. But instead of writing it manually like I do on all of my videos, it's like no, just use the new field notifies. Which is kind of a handy way of doing it a different way. It's just way cleaner in my head. It's like it's less parsing information through that left hand like variables, functions, dispatchers, like trying to keep really aligned with like the status quo or like the state of the art of Unreal Blueprints or Unreal Engine in general, and just using what exists. So like if I went to a company right now and I went and I created an event dispatcher for some event off a Boolean, and someone just sat there and said, you could have just used a field notify right there. It's all built in already for you. You didn't need to create all this extra bloat. It's like that's awesome. Yeah. And it has an ID. Is that ID a gameplay tag?
No, it's literally just the name of the variable,
Oh,
is
okay.
what it is. So like these are the names of the variables, the field notifies that are available on the VM modal, which I did this all in Blueprint just as it's kind of for fun. So you see these are all the field notifies, all the different pieces of
Ah,
data that are
yeah.
relevant in this modal. The modals and models and view models, the
Yes, right.
wording and semantics gets really tricky sometimes. Um, but yeah, because the whole MVVM system, this whole like view bindings and everything, like it's all just building on top of the existing field notifies.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's field notifies that exist in on like the widget level, like these widget properties that have field notifies that have nothing to do with MVVM. Um,
Yeah.
but they've really built a nice system. Now, if I could just snap my fingers and do something, it'd be to make this whole like interface with the view bindings, make this UX a bit better. Especially when you have a lot of them like this, you can't move them, you can't collect them. It kind of
I have noticed that, yeah. And
becomes,
when you add a new, sometimes it just goes like poof, all the way to the top of your graph, like
yeah.
subclass it under like something because that's what it's relevant to, right? And then you're searching
Hmm.
for it. Like I noticed that straight off the bat as well.
Yeah.
I fingers crossed that a little bit of like what you call DX today, which is something I haven't heard before as well.
Mhm.
Developer experience. Yeah, I I did
I don't
always
know
just
if it's
say
like an official thing, but like
I
it's
like
something
it.
I think is important, you know?
It is absolutely. A lot of my stuff that I was doing in old companies was DX, was just like for designers, like making
Hmm.
systems and tools that were really conducive of them iterating um,
Yeah.
on game design generally, like coming up with new enemy patterns and things like that. One thing that I always
Yeah.
get confused of, and maybe having used this a lot more than I have, is like
Hmm.
when I read this from left to right, I'm
Mm.
always reading it as like transaction button, for example. Yeah, transaction
Yeah.
button clicked. Then the store view models transaction request item IDs should do something, and the next line is what it should do is in this case become the get selected item IDs.
Yeah. So
Or
the way
am I reading it back to front?
you're not wrong with reading it this way. It's funny. It's just something one of our UI designers, when I was teaching him these view bindings, he found the same thing really confusing because he's like, wait, these want me to read right to left, but I read left to right, and like what direction is it really going? Because some of these are going left to right, and it does get a bit confusing until you really like until it clicks, and then once it clicks, it's like, oh, this
So
is easy.
that's basically where I'm at. Is like it hasn't clicked yet. I
Yeah.
fiddle around and I do it both ends, and I'm like, oh, here's how I get my clicked event, or here's how I get my thing and push it in or pull
Hmm.
it out. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So the actual binding, like every binding has a source and a destination. And it's these lines here that have the fold arrow and the checkbox. This is like the actual binding. This is the event that's happening. And so in this case, the source here is the buttons on click. The destination is we're setting these item IDs to something. And underneath of that, so you can kind of see like a whole bunch here and this one here. These are all just properties. You can kind of think of them like inputs on a function.
yeah.
So these are just properties. And in this case, the property, if I break this chain, it's like, okay, we want to set these item IDs, but what do we set them to, right? This button unclicked doesn't give us item IDs. We need to tell it what item IDs that we want. And so click the chain, so we're going to bind it to something. And in this case, we want the item IDs the from this function, actually, VM get selected item IDs, which
Oh yeah.
here, I don't know why I'm doing it like this. Oh, yeah, I don't remember. But either way, this is a way of you can string together like blueprint functions into this, right? Where, you know, how do we get the input parameter? How do we know what item IDs we want? Is it runs that particular function, and then the output of that function is what ends up actually becoming these item IDs.
It's only a valid entry for that property if it outputs the same
Yeah, that's like a
type. Yeah.
key. Absolutely, that's a key thing with MVVM. You see it here, where like the destination property here is a visibility, eSlate visibility. So it's going to expect an eSlate visibility. If you don't give it eSlate visibility, you're going to get compiler errors. It's not going to work. So, you need some way to take whatever data you have and turn it into a eSlate visibility. So that's what these conversion functions are great for. And these are just all the input parameters of the conversion function, and this is where, like I mentioned on the C++ side, if you make your input parameters const ref, then they have to be references to something. So if I break this chain, right, I can't just put something in, it has to connect to something. But here, these states, they're not const ref, they're just copied values. So I could actually pick what I want, or I could bind it to some kind of property.
Yeah, nice. I like that, because then you can sort of like guide the developer, if they're a designer, like to use real data rather than coming up with whatever they want, and then give them the opportunity to come up with whatever they want when they're allowed to.
Empower the designers, let them have fun.
Yeah, this is great. I can't thank you enough for going through a bunch of this stuff. It's like such a deep system, such a slowly getting better documented Unreal system. I have to say, one of the probably better documented Unreal systems that of late. And
there's a lot of good community stuff too out there, and it's tricky with Unreal because like you have your official documentation, which never really goes very deep. Then you have community stuff, which it could be hit or miss. You don't really know what kind of practices are happening, if it's gonna actually be something that happens in in real production or not.
Right, exactly. That's the trouble I always have. So as a closing note, let's wrap up. And if you've got any this is sprung on you, I should have maybe come up with this before we started the call, is like, if you have any like resources you want to let anyone know about as we sort of like wind down. I know the Irene Xanon one is great. That's the one that I was doing recently and was a great refresher. But if there's anything out there that you're like, hey, if you're into UI, UMG, and you're learning, what have we looked at today? Materials. We talked a little bit about common UI. We talked a little bit about MVVM. But
I'd say like my favorite resource, which is one that I've come and gone to like for many, many years. It used to be called Ben UI, but is now called Unreal Garden. And there's an Unreal Garden Discord. And this Discord server, it is a little gem. It's got so many. It's got the creator of UMG. He's pretty active there. One of the ex-lead engine programmers at Epic, and just like a ton of just like some of the smartest UI people that blow me out of the water are very active there. So I've learned a lot through osmosis just reading these chats. And it has an MVVM channel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to go like as soon as I have a issue, I'm like, I'll go and hit the search bar on these kind of Discords, Unreal Source and things like that. But a UI specific one is hyper powerful. Although it doesn't seem to be opening for me as I attempted to open that to show people. I guess it's because we're currently streaming and I'm in streamer mode, so it's like, hey, no, you can't do anything.
Yeah, but definitely recommend just as a place to lurk or hang out or ask questions. People are very friendly. That's actually the Discord where I was having discussions with this one guy, Sergey, who he has a website with blog posts talking about MVVM, showing some examples, and that's where I'm like, hey, in MVVM architecture, like the view model knows the model, but the model doesn't know the view model. How come yours is the other way around? Like, and so got into discussions with him, and that's where I'm like, yeah, you know what? There might be something to this. This like, it's guess it's MVVM. The nomenclature I think gets really confusing because technically I think in this case there's my model could be considered a presenter. The whole thing gets really
start talking about design patterns. It's like
I don't think anybody fully agrees on what MVVM truly is, because the different places that you might use it might be implemented different ways. But
it's versatile is the main thing. It's if you've got a command pattern or a pattern in mind and you want to do like MVC or whatever, you could probably do it with this system because it's so quite open to interpretation.
It's very common actually for these MVVM implementations in Unreal to basically become MVC, where like the view model becomes smart and becomes more like a controller. It is
that's kind of what I've seen as in some ways it's like anything you want to happen in your UI and your click events and stuff, you're actually just calling functions straight on
Mhm.
the view model, which are then delegating out
Yeah.
to the model to have something actually change and then come and trickle back down.
Mhm.
And keeping yourself decoupled in that way where you're like, I'm allowed to call I'm allowed to call things
Yeah.
from my view model in Unreal as a designer. I know there's like a nice list of functions in my view model that
Mhm.
I can just straight up trigger. You've done very similar things here with the tags and the interactions, and it's more, I would say, like evergreen in your case because you can do a lot more with that than it being like specified function calls on the
Mhm.
view model as a controller. Um, you're reporting state change from a
Yeah.
view
Yeah.
perspective, right? Yeah. That's been super cool, man. I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. On the Ben UI thing,
Likewise.
someone at work was like, "You should make Ren UI." I was like, I am not stepping on that person's toes.
Oh, that's
Like,
great.
I've learned so much. They've been, I don't think I mentioned on the stream, but I mentioned to you earlier. It's like I'm doing this in 2009. I think Ben UI um, was like one of the first things I ever saw when I
Mhm.
was getting into Unreal Engine. So like, it's been there the whole time. That and like
Yeah.
I've seen people drop out of like the Unreal sort of like hemisphere as well. Like there was this guy
Mhm.
UE5 who used to do a lot of particle systems, or
Mhm.
I can't remember his handle. Um, but yeah, it's interesting to see that stuff. Ren UI. I was like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. That,
uh,
that's pretty good one. But thanks for having me. This has
yeah,
been a
yeah,
lot of fun. I'd love just talking about UI stuff. I'm glad I had projects to show that didn't completely break. I was definitely scrambling to get these in a somewhat stable state to be able to show them off.
I'm
It's
super grateful.
constantly changing and evolving, and I think it's a great way to learn just as like a general piece of advice of like just
Able to shop.
build something,
Yeah,
just go like get messy and like just try it. It's good to be able to look back at these things and point out like because you're gonna have the benefit of hindsight of this was a good idea, this didn't really work out, and then that can really help going forward. But yeah, yeah, I really
yeah,
appreciate having the chance to just talk shop and
yeah, man. Hopefully the
yeah.
first of many. And I think what I'll do is like a as like a running thing is if you have a recommendation for someone who likes UI,
Mm,
UMG, Unreal Engine, or maybe even Unity, get them in touch, and maybe we'll sort of like do a daisy chain like you see on Twitter when people are like tagging each other. Um,
yeah,
yeah, man. If you have someone in mind, like get them in touch with me, and we'll run a little thing and look at something else, and that would be
sure.
super cool. All
Yeah,
right, man.
that'd be great. But yeah, thanks again. It was great getting to hang out and chat with you and showcase stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
keep in touch. Keep in touch. I'll see you on streams and stuff,
Absolutely.
and I'll keep in touch on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. So yeah, everyone,
you'll
this
know
has
where to
been
find me.
Mike. This has been Mike. You
Yeah,
can find him on on LinkedIn if you want to connect. And so it's like Behavior Interactive is where you're currently at, right?
yeah,
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, have a good night,
yeah.
man.
Thanks. Yeah,
Thanks for
you too.
stopping by. Yeah, see ya.
Anytime. Have a good one. Bye. Easy.
I would love if my camera worked right now, but it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Because I would like to do a quick little outro and say thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll be back with another UI stream. But unfortunately, I'm stuck in just not being anywhere here. Crazy. Crazy. This is the only way I can get myself on the screen. Thanks again for watching. If you have questions, drop them in the VOD. If you've got recommendations for people or you want to jump on the stream, and join us and talk about UI, just geek out about UMG or blueprints in general, multiplayer, anything you want to talk about in Unreal, I'd love to have you on, and I'd love to just like talk shop and share stories and generally like disseminate knowledge amongst sort of like new age Unreal devs and new and old as well. So it's nice to share. So thanks for watching. Next time I'll fix my camera and I'll be able to do an outro properly. But for now, I am the head of this shark. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.